Hi. Uh, okay. So first of all, just as a thought experiment, can you imagine losing your home and ending up in a service, and you are in that service for a long time? Imagine taking that time out to actually talk to someone. Within that, it's a high stress environment, and in all high stress environments, the time is, even though there might be more time, it's also incredibly valuable. So I just wanted to thank them for that. Then I have my three great supervisors. Andy started off my project where I knew nothing about vapes. Um, Kevin originally brought me some vapes to try out, and then Andy went to Scotland to find out the best one. Kevin helped with a lot of the clinical stuff, and then it always helps when you're trying to get ethical approval when your supervisor is the head of the school and also the head of the ethics department. Um, then Dublin Simon, which is I volunteered with Dublin Simon for 9 months. I helped them work on their harm reduction policy, and in the harm reduction policy, the nurse that was working in the hostel that I ended up recruiting, she wanted to have a smoke-free hostels. There was a lot of resistance, so I typed in tobacco harm reduction, and that's how I originally got connected with the scholarship. And also thank you for the scholarship in the first place. And Tom from Refill Station up in Scotland, he provided all of it for very cheap, so that's great. And the ethics committee, they were struggling with the fact that I was also doing a PhD, but they let me do it anyway. So with the study design, participants had to blow over 5 parts per million. One was excluded. We had 4 mandatory meetings, week 1, 4, 8, and 12. And in between, during that time, there was a Fagerstrom mood and physical symptom scale and the CO measurement. And then every week, anyone that wanted could come in and get 2 bottles of more liquid. Also, at those 4 weeks, they had a €15 voucher. Notably, what was absent from it was any sort of motivational interview CBT component, and that was largely based because I haven't learned that completely yet. But I would advise that for the next one. So in the context, I think it's important to note that Ireland is having a homeless crisis. There is over 10,000 people at the moment, and you live in an environment where you have one-night-only shelters, which are literally one night. People get thrown out in the street. Then you have rolling beds, which are a bit longer. Then you have supported temporary accommodation, and then long-term. Now, my study sample are in the the STAs, and they could be in there for 6 months, and then they move around. But often, for a variety of reasons, they get shifted between them the whole time. Throughout my study period, 30% would have left, which was a bit of a problem. The average age of them was 40 years. Average age homeless was around 27, and the range of that was 12 to 50. There is the double on there, but the duration of homelessness was around average 11 years. Some of them were 1 year, and 10 people completed the study in total, 8 males and 2 females. There were some other ones that I would have been able to catch up with. One of them was in hospital, and one left before I could take the carbon monoxide monitor. But on average, those completing the study were older when they first became homeless, and homeless for a shorter time period. Smoking habits. Yeah, so it's worth noting too that people who are homeless are generally much more likely to smoke. Up to 90% of the people are smoking. They are also more likely to get the harms associated with smoking. So from walking outside for long periods of time, for a number of different issues associated with the lifestyle, poor nutrition, they're exposed to the harms of smoking, and the rates of COPD, lung cancer are incredibly high in the population. But on average anyway, they started smoking when they were 13. They smoked for up to 26 years. They smoked around 20 cigarettes a day. 11 study participants had never tried to quit, and I think that's an important point. Most people had never been asked to do anything about their smoking, and had even hadn't even thought about it. So I might skip that. So that's just what happens, and one of the big problems here was data protection. So if had consent from them, but they didn't have consent from the service provider. The service providers didn't have the consent from them to share the information. So you have I didn't anticipate that, but it's something that people need to be aware of. With the Vegas realm, you can see it just changed a little. And the mood and physical symptom scale. Now, the important thing with the mood and physical symptom scale is that some of the measurements are around depression, anxiety, some of the other symptoms and things associated with smoking, and it's very hard to disentangle them, but when you are in a short time period, you're meeting people, and you bring up depression, that can lead to a half an hour, 45-minute long conversation, but you have someone knocking at the door. But each of those facets need to be addressed and tackled, and some sort of referral pathways, but sometimes you don't have a service to refer them to. So it can bring up a lot of issues for people just asking those questions around depression and anxiety. Now, the number of cigarettes smoked, you can see a big drop, but for some people they tried it and then it didn't work for them and they went back, or the device broke and then they went back, or there was two cases. One, the sister was hospitalized. She was in a coma, and he went back smoking afterwards, and then it reduced when she went out of the coma again. The other, there was another hospitalization. There was the death of a mother. There's a number of different things that happened during the period. It's just, but yeah, as you can see, there was the same with the carbon monoxide. There's big issues with carbon monoxide though, because for one, some people will struggle to use the device. Even though you will repeat a number of times how to use it, it can be really hard for some people. It's also really hard for people who have COPD and lung cancer. They might not physically be able to hold their breath or blow into it. It can be really traumatic experience for them. And also, if you have your study site and there's people coming at the door, that means there's a number of people outside. So if someone is sharing a spliff, there's a sharing of tobacco, sharing of spliffs when everyone is around, and it's a high stress environment again. Also, that is another thing to consider for other studies, is people might stop smoking cigarettes, but they're smoking joints. So in the absence of having some form of vaporization product for cannabis, then if someone's smoking 14 joints with tobacco, you have an issue there. Yeah, so you can see there's one person made completely the switch. Second person too, it took a while for him. You can see there I'll actually bring it up there. So the first study participant, he had almost quit smoking until his sister was hospitalized. And then he went back to dramatic reduction. The second one, he was transitioning out of homelessness. And the last time I met him, it was in his new house. So it shows that one of the ways of dealing with homeless smoking is housing. It's an uncomfortable reality that for new liberals. But anyway, participant 3, he abandoned vaping because of the tobacco taste. He didn't find the tobacco taste. We tried 4 or 5 different types of fluid. He couldn't find the tobacco taste in the product. Participant 4, he moved to a different facility and he stopped drinking, and he had completely stopped. And he had completely stopped, and then there was a vape ban and he went back to smoking again in the next facility. The other person who transitioned, he just started new employment. And participant 9, she completely stopped smoking, and then her mother passed away. And with participant 10, his partner was hospitalized, so he's under stress. And you can see that with those. Challenges, follow-up, thefts and breakages, bereavements and stress if you don't figure out how to deal with it, vape bans, taste Opportunities. Most people want to quit smoking. They did reduce their smoking. Some people completed the study. If there was better data protection systems, more people would have completed the study. It really helped them financially. It helped their health. Some people increased their energy. Stronger tobacco flavors should be encouraged. Menthol is no. Sorry, 2 seconds. Menthol flavors were almost completely absent. No one wanted menthol. Berry and American tobacco were the biggest. And I just want to finish on those, which is the 3 things from the homeless people themselves. I just wanted to give up. I must have spent a fortune on cigarettes. When I got a chance of getting a vape, I jumped at it. Deadly, very good. If I was in a house on my own, I would be off the cigarettes together. I found that it was brilliant that it could be done in a hospital. Sorry, that was a bit rushed, but